journeying with Joseph. And you can turn this mic down a little bit, my brother, if you would. You can turn this mic down just a little bit. I appreciate it. Genesis chapter 40, verse 8. I'm a little hot. I don't want to get no hotter. Genesis chapter 40, verse 8. And I'll read to you out of the King James Version. If you get it, shout amen. Amen. In the King James Version, the text says this, and they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Today I'd like to speak to you from the subject, to tell the truth. To tell the truth. Father, use me for your glory and your benefit only, that your people might be edified, that we might have a stronger witness when we leave this place, that we might be encouraged by what you impart to us today in Jesus' name. Amen. We've been journeying with Joseph. We talked about the dreamer the first night. We talked about the resistant righteous man, and the righteous resist. We talked about that the second night. And then tonight, we're skipped over to Genesis chapter 40. In Genesis chapter 40, it picks up in the aftermath and the consequence of Joseph's encounter with Potiphar's wife in Potiphar's house, in which he resisted that woman's advances to the point where he left his clothes behind, gave her evidence to give false accusation against him, and subsequently he is imprisoned, and he has now found himself in the third precarious position of his young life. First, he'd been in a pit, a cistern, or a large ground opening where the brothers had left him before he was sold off into slavery, and he went from there to Potiphar's house where he was a servant, and because of the adventure there, he ends up in a prison. And you've heard all these sermons about from the pit to the palace and all that stuff, so I can't do no better than other preachers have already done with that. But this is his third position in his journey that he's found himself in. And the text tells us that as a result of this woman's accusation, he is imprisoned. Now, I have to think it's pretty common throughout history, including perhaps the ancient cultures that we sort of encounter in biblical texts, that the worst type of accusations, Reverend Ellis, are those of a sexual nature. They say if you are incarcerated and you have committed some sexual crime against someone, especially, someone who's vulnerable or young of some nature, you are considered at some of the lowest points of the totem pole, if you will. If you've been accused of taking advantage of someone, because even the other inmates think, that could be my mother or my sister or my daughter. So they just get this thought about them that you're at the bottom. I mean, we'd rather you have robbed a store or harmed another man or done something of that nature than taking advantage of a woman. So Joseph is not just in prison, he's probably viewed by way of accusation as one of the lower figures now, even amongst criminals or persecuted individuals. Now, it's funny because there are really no other criminals mentioned in the text, just people who have lost favor in one way or another with those who had charge over them. I say it again. There are no hardened criminals in the text. There's no mass murderers, none of that. There's a baker and a butler who done got on Pharaoh's nerves. And they're in there with Joseph, who is, got on Potiphar's bad side. And I'm sure there's other folk in there. They're just not explicitly mentioned. in the text, he is now there, but a funny thing is mentioned. He is somehow still given a position of favor and authority in prison. The text indicates to us that he'd been in for some time, and he put them in the place where Joseph was, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended or had some level of influence or interaction or oversight of them. Joseph, who by way of the accusation should be the lowest, is somehow still given some form of favor, even if it's just in the sign of having Pharaoh's servants accountable to him. I told y'all last night that no matter where you go, if God's favor is on you, God's favor will go with you. God's favor goes with you, it will have an impact on everybody you come into contact with. And that's why it's so important, tonight's theme, that we maintain what God has imparted to us in spite of our circumstances, because sometimes we end up in low positions so that we can interact and impact people who find themselves in low places. So God allows us to be lowered in certain circumstances so that we can meet somebody else who's in a similar low circumstance but don't have the favor we got. Now, there was an old game show called To Tell the Truth. You know, it was old. How do you know about that, young preacher? Well, when you go over to grandma's house a lot, and they watch TV Land and the Game Show Network all day, you start learning about them shows that before your time. And then To Tell the Truth, they would set up 3 panelists, and the host would mention that one of them is a person of some unique occupation or calling or position in life, and you got to figure out which one it is. And the panelist celebrities got to ask them questions to figure out which one is the valid, legitimate person, and the 2 others are the imposters.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And see, there are sort of a bit of cat and mouse wordplay and verbalizing where these 2 imposters are tasked with trying to make it look like they could be the one, even if they're not the one. And you have to ask enough pointed questions and have enough pointed interaction, and then discern and pay close attention to body language and the confidence of one's answers. And then you have to just let a little bit of intuition and gut feeling try to come in to make an educated guess on which one is the valid and legitimate figure. Joseph is in a similar position. He's already seen God's hand upon him. He's been rescued from death by the hands of his brothers, so they was going to kill him. He was rescued from false accusation, and you know that's punishable by death in some cases, and he's in prison. And now the validity and the legitimacy of his calling has to be further affirmed, and he's put around some people, and I'm sure they might respect him for the favor that's on him, because just like Potiphar, I'm sure they knew that there was something about him, but sometimes there needs to be a deeper interaction with him to make sure he's valid or legitimate or not. It's further evident, this theme of truth or finding out about legitimacy or validity, because Joseph has been identified as a dreamer. He has identified himself as one who has had dreams. And by the very basic nature of his, just his disposition as a young 17-year-old, he couldn't help when he had dreams but to tell folk what he dreamed about. Now, here's the crazy thing. He's like a lot of children. If they tell you if you want to know the truth, ask a child or a drunk. Because they will both show enough spit it out whether you ask for it or not. And see, as a young pretentious 17-year-old who is not aware and not too confined to the norms and the morals and sort of the hierarchies of society, he don't know nothing but to tell folk what he sees. And that's why he gets in trouble in the first place. Because he can't help but to just tell what he sees, what he's dreaming about. So here's the crazy thing about Joseph, Reverend Ellis. He becomes a truth teller by default because he can't help but tell the truth. God's given him a dream and he can't help but express what that dream is. But Joseph is not just a dreamer. Joseph is an interpreter of dreams also. Now, it's interesting to pause in the story, in this journey that we're in, because it's often overlooked that as much as we talk about Joseph's dreams, the fact of the matter is he only had 2 dreams in the beginning. He only had a couple dreams in the beginning, and he interpreted his own dreams, and we all know how that worked out for him. But after that, he ends up running into other folk who have dreams. And he is no longer having dreams. He has no dreams recorded in Potiphar's house. He has no dreams recorded in prison. And when he gets to Pharaoh's palace, he has no dreams there. But he runs into folk who have dreams. And the ability to interpret the dreams now comes front and center as opposed to his experience dreaming dreams. And here is the blessing, that the struggle and the trauma and the misfortune did not temper Joseph's ability to interact accurately with dreams. Because a lot of people go through stuff that robs them of their dreams. And not just their own dreams, but their ability to see and appreciate anybody else's dream. I talked last night about frustration. Here's what frustration and trauma and struggle will do to you. Not only will it quench the dream within, but it'll start to quiet the dreams outside of you, that if you're not doing so great, you don't want to hear about nobody else that's doing well. Okay, if you were going out for the football team and you broke your leg, you ain't cheering for the brother running touchdowns. Because your dream is crushed. And we see it on the sidelines all the time. I couldn't be that quarterback, Reverend Ellis, who got pulled out the game. I'm the veteran, you know. I'm the one that carried the team for a while, and now my skills are waning, and they put the fresh new guy in, and you see that old quarterback giving them tips and, you know, giving him advice. I couldn't be that dude. I'm going to the bench. I done did my thing. He got to learn on his own. Because it's hard to believe in somebody else's dream when you've been robbed of your own. Can I get some honest folk in this church on a Wednesday night that have ever been in a place where your dreams weren't working out, your life wasn't flowing the way you thought it would, and when you started to hear about other folks' testimonies and successes and goals being achieved, you were like, I guess, all right. But he's got to tell the truth. And it's a blessing that he still has this interactive familiarity with dreams, even beyond the experience of his own. It's a lesson for us that there are seasons that we will encounter in life where we are no longer dreaming for ourselves, but pouring into others, developing and growing and encouraging others to pursue or at least understand or bring clarity to the dreams that they're having. Amen. His gifting was never removed from him. It was just redirected from an inward orientation, from an inward concern to what do I see for me, to how can I help someone else understand what they see. This little introspective tonight, if you don't mind. Some of us have to look over the journey of our lives and ascertain what season are we in. Are we here for God to do some great work in us, or are we here for God to use us as he does a great work in another? Because sometimes your greatness is confined and constricted by how willing you are to push someone else forward in their vision just as much as your own. While you're trying to promote yourself, while you're trying to elevate yourself, while you're trying to advance yourself, God just might be placing people in your life strategically to test you and see, will you extend the same mercy and the same grace and the same encouragement and the same uplift to someone else that they need from you? Will you do it? Will you give them the same thing you needed when you were young? Or have you gotten to your place in life you ain't got time for nobody who's struggling? You ain't got time for nobody who's going through this. You got your own issues to worry about. And just like last night, Joseph had every right to sit in a corner and sulk about his own condition. He had every right to just kind of go into solitary confinement and just spend time watching and wishing and waiting and praying for God to do a work in him. But this moment with this baker and this butler gives an opportunity that he seizes hold of that every one of us can learn from. The butler and the baker both have their own dreams. And they are in trouble because they have a limited engagement with dreams. They can only dream. Amen. But they cannot interpret. Not only can they not interpret, they can't find anyone else who can interpret. And Joseph says something powerful. I believe it's a turning point. It's a realization, a declaration, a proclamation, if you will, that is very interesting for us to pay attention to. He says these simple words in the King James Version. He says, do not interpretations belong to God? That's powerful. That's powerful. The NLT says it like this: interpretation is God's business. That's powerful. Can I tell you why it's powerful to me? Because when he first had his early dreams, his teenage dreams, he just got up and told his brothers and his father, I had a dream. And here's what I saw. And they took their own conclusions from what he dreamed. Does Joseph think he's going to rule over us? Does he think he's going to be greater than us? He's just a kid. He don't know no better. He's just having a human experience that all humans have. He hasn't quite, we haven't quite seen perhaps the divinity. We haven't quite seen the heavenly interception yet. He's just a kid with a dream. And he's just talking about his dream. And they're just drawing conclusions from his dream. But in prison, he says something different. He says, I, somewhere along the line, have developed the opinion or the thought process that the dreams are not just about us, but dreams are God's business. And the interpretation of them is God's business. Now maybe this is due to the fact that the last time somebody other than God interpreted his dream, they hated him for it. And he said, I'm not going to let people try to figure out. I'm going to make this God's business. Yes, sir. Okay, all right. Let's turn a corner. Will you turn a corner with me? There comes a place and time in life where all of our human efforts and our human experiences require God's intervention for us to have a right experience with them. Are you ready? In other words, we have to be willing to shift our focus from what I can get out of it and what I think about it and what I know the world's experience is with it to what is God's role in the midst of it. Because there's a whole lot of stuff you can do in this life without ever mentioning God and ever acknowledging the Savior and ever submitting to the Spirit. You don't, this will be dangerous, don't get mad at me. There's a whole lot of folk out there got a job without God. A whole lot of folk out there that met somebody and got married without God. A whole lot of folk that wasn't thinking about God when they went to college and went all the way through and got a degree. But a turn happens in life when you say, yes, in my human experience, I can accomplish some things, I can experience some things, I can have some things, I can gain some things. But a turn occurs when you put God in the middle of whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're accomplishing, whatever it is you're striving for. It's a spiritual turn, it's a divine turn, because now you start to walk in the ways of the Lord when he says, acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he shall, y'all ain't talking to me, direct thy path. Now the funny thing is, you had ways before you were acknowledging God, but it's not until you acknowledge God that he starts directing your path in all your ways. You can do what you want, you can say what you want, you can achieve what you want, but until you put God in it, he won't smile on it, he won't bless it, he won't shine on it, he won't increase it, he won't multiply it, because you left him out of the equation. Ask your neighbor, is God in it? Here's what Joseph realized about the whole dream experience he's having. This is not of me. This is God's business. If I got anything to say or offer, Rev, it's going to come because God gave me the ability and the favor to give you clarity on what you're dreaming. So tell me what you're dreaming. Tell me what you saw in the midnight hour. And the first man tells Joseph his dream. The brother I had a dream, and I dreamed I was serving Pharaoh again. He was eating out the palm of my hand. I was squeezing the juice right into his cup. I was doing the duty that a good butler and cupbearer would do. And that's what I dreamed. And Joseph says, here's what I know your dream means. In 3 days, you'll be back in Pharaoh's court. And you'll be serving him again and restored to your position. And the baker heard that and said, woo! There's got to be a word for me too. I wasn't going to tell you, but after I heard what you said to him, let me tell you about my dream. He said, in my dream, I had baked every pastry known to man that I know the Pharaoh liked. And I piled it high in baskets and was carrying it up to him. But before I got there, birds swooped in and started to eat up all the bread, all the donuts, all the eclairs, all the bear claws, all the strudel, they just tore that sucker up. By the time I got to Pharaoh, it was empty. Joseph said, your dream means in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to call for you, but not to restore you, but to execute you. Somebody shout to tell the truth. See, if you are going to operate in the divine, you've got to operate in the nature of the divine. And God is a God of truth. God is the most straight talkingest being you've ever seen. You ever meet some folk that are straight talkers? They cut it straight, no chaser, no frills, no frosting, no, they just lay it out there. That's our God. We don't get what we used to call in the business world compliment sandwiches. Where they tell you something good about yourself, then they tell you something you need to improve, then they tell you something else good about yourself. God ain't got that kind of time to waste with you. If you need to get right, he just corrects you. If you're wrong, he just calls you out. He ain't fooling with you trying to worry about your feelings. He's worried about your soul. And because God is a truth teller, if you are going to represent him, you got to be a truth teller too. Joseph is not just an interpreter, but he is a truth teller. And he's got to tell the truth regardless of what it means or how it's perceived to the people who are hearing it. I wish somebody would talk back to me right quick. And church, we've got to be careful that we are direct, that we are straightforward, and that we are clear about God's truth. If God has shown you something, you ain't got time to waffle with it. Somebody's life is on the line. Somebody's destiny is in the balance. Somebody's promise might be dependent upon whether you are operating in the truth of Jesus Christ or whether you're making the funk. Because some of us are so out for popularity and to gain friends and to keep folk on our side that we'll say anything to stay in folks' good graces. But I'd rather please the Lord and upset men than be popular with men and displease my God. There comes a point in time in life where even when you are in a precarious situation, because here's what Joseph could have said. He could have said to himself, if this butler and this baker gets out of here and I don't say good things about them, they might hurt my chances of getting out. But at a certain point, you got to stop wondering about your outcome and start worrying about what will please God. The old thing used to say, for God I live, and for God I die. If I die serving him, then I'll die serving him. If people won't like me, then they just won't like me. But I want to see Jesus. I want to please him. I want him to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. And making folk happy don't always make that happen. Placating people don't always make that happen. Rubbing folk with backs don't always make that happen. Sometimes you have to tell the so to tell the truth, to do 3 things. Here's what Joseph's at. Here's what Joseph's at. He has to tell the truth. It means 3 things. Number 1, it means to speak realistically. It means to address what is, not what others wish or hope would be. Especially if they see you as a figure who could change their position because of who you are and what you have.
There you go.
Here's the truth of the matter. Once they found out that Joseph might have a little gifting, they were almost like Potiphar's wife, just in a different fashion. They were lusting after what Joseph had, but not the purity of who he was.
Yes, sir.
They just wanted good news.
Yes, sir.
But Joseph is tasked with speaking realistically. Look, y'all are here for a reason. You're here for a reason. You know what's hard to do these days, preachers, is tell folk, you know you're in this situation for a reason.
Yes, yes.
Nobody wants to hear preaching anymore that reminds them that the wages of sin is death.
Here it is. Preach.
Nobody wants to hear preaching anymore that reminds them that if you don't please God, things might not work out well for you.
There you go.
You know, nobody wants to hear I told you. Nobody, that's judgment now. That's putting people down. But if I don't tell you the truth of how you got in it, all I'm doing is setting you up to fall right back again after you leave.
Tell it.
If I don't tell you that this pattern of living, that if I don't tell you that these habits you developed, if I don't tell you that this wrong thinking puts you in this position, then all I'm going to do is shout you happy, tell you everything's going to be all right, and you go right out and do the same thing over again, wondering why God ain't blessing you. But the man of God, the woman of God, the interpreter of dreams, the truth teller has to speak realistically. He has to speak to what is. Because God can't change what is till you tell him what is. Here's what we've developed in church. I think some fake word of faith doctrine did this to us. Don't speak it. Don't you speak that on you. You start coughing. I think I'll say, don't you say that. Oh, man. I think I'm coming in. Don't you say that now. Because if you say it, you're going to go, if I'm sick, I'm sick. And if I don't acknowledge it, I won't call a doctor. I won't take the pill. I won't ask for prayer. I got to be real about it. Touch your neighbor, tell them, be real about it. Yeah. It might be a fault. It might be a sin. It might be something you're going through. If you are, just confess. Just confess your faults. He is faithful. Yeah. He's just, ain't he? He'll cleanse you from all unrighteousness, won't he? If you confess it. Somebody shout, be real. Be real. The truth teller has to speak realistically. Secondly, the truth teller has to speak faithfully. That means he has to be consistent in his assignment regardless of the outcome. Do you think Joseph wants to tell a man he's going to die after he just got done telling another man he's going to live? That's a tough word, but a word that must be preached. A word that must be spoken. That's why you ought not to run to be a teacher and run to be a leader. Because when you find out what you got to get up in front of God's people and say, you wish you never asked for the call. You wish you never asked the preacher to ordain you. You wish you never asked for a chance to speak. Because when you start revealing some of the stuff that God has dropped in your spirit and you realize that this is not going to get you no amen,